Thank you. I am here to talk a little bit about how we as nonprofit organizations and NGOs can be prepared for some of the changes that George and Peter talked about. And in order to do this, I would like to tell you a story. The hero of this story is not a software engineer, it's not an inventor, not an astronaut, not any kind of scientist. The hero of my story is a Benedictine nun, and she is called Sister Jill. She runs a nonprofit preschool in the United States, and she knows a lot about theology. She knows a lot about the way the brain develops in early childhood, and she knows a little bit about technology. And it's important that she does because technology makes such a difference in the success of her organization. This can make the difference between success and failure for her preschool, and therefore the difference between success and failure for the children that are enrolled there and for their families. She has to make critical decisions every day about what kinds of investments to make when she has very limited resources. And I think this might be true of some of you as well, whether you're from a small organization or a very large international organization. Here are some of the trends that might not be so new, but are affecting Sister Jill's organization, which is called the Eastside Learning Center. Cloud is one trend that has been around for a long time, and this is persistent, but yet nonprofit organizations are still lagging behind on this. One thing that they've done in the preschool is to convert all of their file sharing, all of their document storage to the cloud. And they had a lot of choices here, but what they chose is box.org. Are people familiar with that? Is this in common use in this part of the world? I see a few people raising their hands. They were able to access this platform at no charge through a product grant from Box. And it's similar to Dropbox. This is an enterprise application that's used for file sharing. They've also moved many of their applications to the cloud, such as their accounting software. And so this is important, even though this isn't a very exciting trend, because stable and secure infrastructure is a prerequisite for any other kind of technology innovation. If you don't have that basic foundation right, then you might be wasting your time on doing things that are a little bit more new and emerging technologies. So this is important. Another thing, which often organizations move to after they have gotten the basic infrastructure in place, is to think about data management. Now, in Sister Jill's organization, she is feeling a lot of pressure for accountability, for transparency. She needs to make sure that her organization is as effective as it can be, and she understands that that using data well, analyzing it, using it to predict, those are all things that help her make her organization more effective, right? So one thing she's looking at right now that she has actually just implemented is a case management system. And this is a specialized kind of CRM application, which, and there are many choices here that are built especially for nonprofit organizations to manage the information about their services and the people who participate in their programs, particularly in human services. So she's made a choice about that. Now that she has this software implemented, she's starting to think more about how can I get more from this investment? Maybe through workflow automations, or maybe through predictive analytics. As one small example, she might actually she might use big data, bring in census data that shows that in her multicultural community, in 2 years, she can predict that 60% of her students will speak Spanish at home, even though English is the dominant language in the country. And so this means that she has 2 years to prepare for this. She can hire Spanish-speaking teachers. She can translate materials into Spanish, things like this. So data is helping her to not just prove that their organization is doing what it says it is doing, but also to be more effective by predicting what is needed in the future. And another very important trend for her is mobile technology. There are many things that I could talk about here, but one thing I want to share is she's noticed that most of the parents are using mobile phones as the main way that they access information. So this gives her an idea. What if she used blast text messaging to notify them if the school is closed early because of a snowstorm? Or what about a text blast that goes out every evening, 7 p.m., as a reminder, it's time to read a book with your child. This is a way of extending the education beyond the classroom and into the home. She might also be starting to think about digital currency for paying the tuition, for receiving donations, and so many other ways to use these mobile technologies. I've been talking so far about tools, but technology is also changing the roles of staff within the organization. And it used to be that, maybe only 5 years ago, that the technology person was in charge of fixing the computer when it broke. When the network goes down, you have this person to troubleshoot the network. Now, technology is really everyone's responsibility. And especially for leaders, there is an expectation of much higher digital literacy, data literacy. Leaders need to understand how to align technology strategically with their organization's goals. And it's not just the top leader, it's everyone from the president to the therapist to the cook to the janitor. They all need to have a certain level of digital literacy in order to thrive in today's NGOs. And it's not even just the people inside the organization. Also externally, all of us are required to have a higher level of digital literacy. And as nonprofit leaders, I believe we have a responsibility to our community to educate them. Certainly in the preschool, this is a place where people can learn good digital skills, and they can also learn about their digital rights and learn to advocate for themselves. And we can do that on their behalf as well. Now, I said at the beginning that Sister Jill is the hero of the story. Why is she the hero? She's an ordinary person. Really, she struggles with many of the same things I do as a leader of a small nonprofit organization, but I think this is true of even the largest organizations. We never have enough money to do everything that we dream of doing. We have so many competing priorities, and so we have to make choices. We can't do everything. And the reason that Sister Jill is a hero is that even though she is an ordinary person, she has an extraordinary ability to find the technologies that are practical for her organization and choose the ones that will be most powerful to meet her goals. And she does this even in spite of having so many competing demands on her time and so many different things that she needs to be an expert in. Before I share some of the ways that she does this, I just want to, maybe scare you a little bit. This is not an option. We all must be prepared for the future of technology. And the changes are coming whether we are prepared for them or not. And if we fail to be ready, if we fail to strengthen our organizations to be responsive and resilient, to shape our own future, then we are taking a big risk. We're losing a huge opportunity. Our organizations will be less efficient, they'll be less effective, and in fact, in some cases, human lives may be at risk. And I'll tell you one little story here. I heard from a human rights organization whose list of trainees was obtained by a hostile foreign government, and those people were arrested and detained. Now, fortunately, this has a happy ending. They were released without really being physically harmed. But it may not have had a happy of an ending. And why did this happen? It's because this organization was not prepared for a cybersecurity attack. So even though for some of you the stakes may not be quite as high in your organization, still we are all taking a risk by not being prepared. So let me share some ways that you can prepare. And these are going to be very simple. But let me tell you something. Does anyone practice yoga? Raise your hand. Okay, namaste. In yoga, one of the most important things is breathing. And when you learn this, maybe your first reaction is, well, I've been breathing all my life. I know how to do this. Why do I have to learn different breathing? Well, it's because if you do something simple, but you do it in a very mindful way, in a deliberate way, then it can increase your wellness. You can get so much more life out of that breath. So there are some simple things that you can do to prepare for the future, and these are things that Sister Jill practices. They're things that I practice myself, and I will quickly share these with you. The first one is to stay informed. Now, we know that there is so much information available. It can feel like we're drowning in this flood of information. If you do a Google search for, say, artificial intelligence, you're going to get 100,000 different articles on it, right? So how do you know what you can trust? How do you know what's relevant for you? And I would say, to make this manageable for yourself, my advice is find just 3 sources of information that you're checking regularly. And for one, I would suggest something that is specifically for nonprofit organizations, for NGOs. I might suggest my own organization, Idealware. We have a website with a lot of resources. And there are also many others. There is dogood.org.pl. FRSI has many resources. TechSoup Poland. It's not quite as important which one you choose as that you find something that is impartial, so that you know there's no hidden agenda. It's not being published by, say, a company that's trying to sell you something. You want it to be research-based, to be good quality information, and to be relevant to the type of organization that you have. So you might choose something different if you're a smaller organization or a larger organization, this sort of thing. A second source of information might be more of a mainstream publication, and I know many of you are familiar with TechCrunch. I find this to be a very practical way to stay up to date on business technology, consumer technology. You might also think about something a little bit different, and Scientific American is one that I read because I find it to have a little bit different perspective and more in-depth articles that are very interesting to me. So, but some kind of mainstream publication is helpful. And then thirdly, you need to find a nerd. And maybe you will find one in this room today, if you are from the less nerdy side of the spectrum. This is my friend Joshua, and he is incredibly curious. He reads like 3 books a week. He always knows what's going on. And so every time I talk with him, I come away with like some tip for email productivity or find out about some new product. If I want to learn about social media, I'll say, Joshua, what book should I read? And he always knows, like, don't read these 5 books, just read this one. It's the best one. So this is helpful as well. Now, another aspect, the second tip that I have is to build a culture of experimentation and innovation. And Peter talked a bit about that. So a few tips for that. First, what does a culture of experimentation and innovation look like? One thing is, it's a place where there's a lot of creativity, interaction, and failure is seen not so much as a negative thing, but as a way to learn. One thing that I do, one technique I use is, you can see here, this is my calendar. On Friday mornings, every Friday, recurring appointment, I have 2 hours for learning and experimentation. And this is something that I have learned over the years that will help me to actually make time to learn new things. Otherwise, it seems like I always was running out of time. I have good intentions, but I don't really do it. So this is the time when I have coffee with Joshua, who I showed you before. Or maybe I download some new application and I just play around with it and follow my curiosity. I think it's important as managers, as supervisors, to allow our staff time to do this, maybe even to have a requirement that they do this. And I used to do this with my team. We had a requirement to report out on how we spent this learning time and to teach each other in that way. A second thing to do is to look outside your field. And I've benefited from this greatly. I recently attended a conference on aging, which is not my field at all, but they wanted a technology speaker. So I learned more probably from this than I have from many other experiences I've had. I learned things from people I sit next to on airplanes. And the question I ask, I'll teach you this one, is how is technology affecting your work? You can learn so much from this. Another aspect of culture of innovation is an action orientation. So not just analyzing. I think many of us are interested in technology and maybe we just want to research and ask a lot of questions, but at some point you just have to do. You have to just try something. And thirdly, we're investing in talent. Now, you are all at a conference today, so obviously you know a little bit about the importance of this. It goes beyond, though, just learning in this kind of environment. Professional development is also about mentorship, and it's about performance appraisal and accountability. And so if you incorporate technology skills into the career path that you're designing for someone, if you incorporate that into performance appraisal, this is something that can have a big impact on that person's success and the culture of the organization. When you do get a chance to hire, of course, hire people for their technology skill, but also for a sense of curiosity. And you will not probably have all of the expertise you need in your own organization. So maybe you know about circuit riders. These are volunteers that can help you with technology. There are also many pro bono services that are available, such as DataKind for data-related projects, and of course consultants. And so all of these things can work together for you. Now let's go back to Sister Jill for a moment and revisit her. She is facing many new discoveries about technology. And so, for example, she has read an article about robotics, and she's thinking, okay, can this apply to my preschool? Maybe not. Part of the ability to succeed with technology is knowing what is useful to you and what is not, given your limited resources. But she might also read about crowdfunding. Well, that could have a lot of potential for her organization. Virtual reality might have an application in her classroom, or maybe to spread the word about her program to other schools to compare with her professional colleagues. Different kinds of crowdsourcing and mobile applications, artificial intelligence. There are all kinds of things that you will learn about later today, and I hope that you can take in a lot of new information today, but also see it with a strategic lens and understand what is going to make your organization powerful. So if we are well prepared for the future, to summarize, we all can be more efficient, more effective. Our organizations will do more good in the world. And so this is my hope for you, that you will follow some of this advice, that your mind will be expanded today. And not just my hope, but this is actually like my demand of you, that you need to take responsibility for shaping your future, for preparing your organization for whatever technology comes, even the things that we haven't imagined yet. Build that muscle to be able to be resilient in the future. And that's important for you and for your organization. It's important for the communities that we serve, and really for all of us. Dziękuję. Thank you.